I always find it remarkable how even in an age like this, when there are so many other ways of communicating, public speaking, using one's words to get across one's point is really the most basic and the most important form of communication there is. If anyone really wants to persuade somebody to give them a job or to follow their political party or anything in between, still the art of making a speech, of using words together with the presentation of those words to convey an idea is such an important skill. And our students are, I think, very good at talking, and I think they're very good at public speaking, and I'm sure we're going to hear a wonderful display today. So welcome everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm delighted that we're still doing the Baron Snider competition, even under lockdown, because it's such an important part of school life for so many reasons.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Year 9 Baron Snider Finals for 2020. This year, our topic was a message to the critics, and each student was faced with the task of writing a unique speech regarding this topic.
After putting in much time and effort writing and practicing our speeches, we were then told that the Baron Snider competition would be held online. Being the clever and adaptive students that we are, each student presented an informative and interesting speech via Zoom for the first time in the history of this competition.
2 students from each class were then selected as Year 9 Baron Snider finalists. We would like to say Mazel Tov to these finalists and everyone who participated. And a big thank you to Rabbi Kennard for adjudicating our competition.
Now please enjoy this year's Baron Snider Finals. Our first speaker will be from 9A, who will be discussing university education.
Good morning, everyone. Rabbi Kennard, parents, students. So I thought I would speak about something which in a traditional year would be received with mass amounts of headlines and hashtags, but due to 2020 has gone a bit under the radar. This is the recent decision made by the Federal Education Minister, Dan Tehan, to substantially reduce prices of university courses for subjects such as STEM, agriculture, teaching, and languages, at the expense of social studies, law, commerce, and humanities courses. Likewise to any decision a government makes, it's been faced with backlash. It's no surprise that the leader of the opposition, Anthony Albanese, has expressed distaste for this decision. That's a simple thing called politics. However, what interests me is the wide reaction from the rest of the Australian community, particularly within the adolescent faction, which has reacted with praise, but yes, a lot of criticism as well. Overnight, a petition on the world-renowned change.org was made to dismantle this decision. This is, of course, the change.org that has very minimal credible points and very rarely any positive outcomes. And as entertaining as it is for me to see all these rants on Twitter and Reddit, I feel that it is my responsibility to inform you of the reality behind this decision and the merit of why we need it in order to stop you from being indoctrinated into the prevalent agenda. I will begin with this essential point. To all those who disagree, no, the government altering how much they subsidize your degree is not an infringement of your liberty. This absurd argument has been circled around quite a bit, with some extreme conspiracy theories speculating that this is the beginning of another Nazi Germany right here in Australia. It's evident that this myopic view can only stem from misleading headlines and false media, since if you actually listen to what Dan Tehan himself has said, it is that this change is on a unit level, not a degree level, where he further explains that, let's say you still want to study history, by electing to study IT, maths, or science with it, your degree will still be cheaper. I suppose a valid question is, what's the rationale behind this decision? Why do we need it? Well, it's safe to say that even prior to the economic collapse from this pandemic, Australia, for a first world country, is absent from technological innovation. A recent Bloomberg article spoke about the top 10 most innovative countries in the world, and Australia, well, we weren't on the list. Furthermore, we get ripped off by China in trade. We don't manufacture cars, and 72% of our energy is fossil fuel reliant. So the merit behind the decision is this. We need this to bounce back. And 2020 has been a year of surprises, but one thing remains the same. The world is progressing and is not going to wait for us to catch up. What we need right now isn't journalists who preach about climate change, but rather scientists who are able to fix the decision themselves. So my message to the critics is this. This decision, praise it or hate it, is an absolute necessity if we ever want to bounce back, because we don't win anymore. And to be honest, I wouldn't just want to bounce back. I would want to come back stronger than ever before. And at the end of the day, a painting is a nice luxury, but you need your home with food, water, and power before you worry about the decorations on the wall. So I will end this with the great Winston Churchill, and that is that this decision is not the end, nor is it the beginning of the end, but it might just be the end of the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you for that informative speech.
Next, we'll listen from 9A, whose topic is the critics of children and youth.
Children should be seen and not heard. This has been a commonly held belief for many generations. It is easy to underestimate the power of the younger generation, but their passion, ambition, and determination should not be so easily overlooked. My message to the critics is that the children of today have way too much to say to ever be kept quiet. Amongst many criticisms of our generation is that our reliance on technology is way too high. The most commonly noted gap between the older and younger generations is this reliance on technology in our everyday lives. Anyone who has ever helped their grandparents set up a Netflix account or coached them through using Zoom can agree. It's true, technology may not always be on our side, and some surveys have indicated that Gen Z's dependency on technology has made us less comfortable with face-to-face interactions. Though this might be true, technological reliance also has its benefits. The youth of today are far more efficient in multitasking, responding to visual stimulus, and filtering knowledge than the older generation. Furthermore, our comfort with the internet as a platform for expression and information sharing is a global one and capable of amazing things. Another criticism that we face by the older generation is that this incorporation of technology into our daily lives has made us lazy and that we don't understand the value of a full day's work. Clearly, the older generations don't understand how tiring a full day on Zoom can be. As many of us can attest, growing up in a technological world as digital natives sets us up for success in a world full of digital opportunities. Researchers claim that many of us will be working in jobs that haven't even been invented yet. I believe that some of the biggest current issues, such as climate change and disease control, will no doubt be tackled by our generation using this technological advantage. But has all this technology ruined our potential? A common phrase that we hear from the older generation is "back in my day," followed by a story of them having 3 jobs from the age of 8 and having to walk through the snow uphill to school and back every day. Yes, older generations may have had it harder, leading to the belief that young people are lazy, unresilient, and not hard workers. In reality, the younger generation is just faced with a different set of challenges and opportunities. We've all heard stories of our parents gallivanting around Caulfield on their bikes with no Find My Friends or Google Maps to keep them safe. We can all agree that in the past, the world was also a safer place, with less physical and emotional threats to young people. Opportunities for us young people to gain responsibility and resilience through employment and other character-building pursuits are greatly reduced compared to our parents, and that was before COVID-19. Technology aside, history gives us many examples to support that children are capable of incredible things. From Ruby Bridges, the first African-American child to attend an integrated school in 1960s Louisiana, to Greta Thunberg, a climate activist who presented at the United Nations in 2019. These examples of passion and activism are representative of what young people can achieve. Countries like Scotland have acknowledged this fact by lowering the voting age to 16, allowing for more Gen Z contribution to society. Gen Z's optimistic and ambitious belief that we can change the world proves true, that young people today are better equipped than any other generation to make meaningful change in the world. The critics will soon learn that Gen Z will not be silenced.
Well done. Thanks for sharing your thoughts.
Now we will hear from of 9B and his speech about thanking the critics.
Critics, I thank you. That might sound controversial now, but after this speech, there will be no doubt the positive impact criticism can have and how it has shaped society to create a better life for all. People like Theodore Herzl, Mahatma Gandhi, and Nelson Mandela were all very successful critics. These three men and their stories will inspire you to rethink the word critic and remove the negative connotations from the word. The pioneer of modern Zionism, Theodore Herzl, was a critic for the benefit of our people, the Jews, to create a safe homeland where religious freedom is celebrated and diversity is encouraged. Herzl did not grow up religious, nor have the luxury of a Jewish education like us. Yet he developed a connection to Judaism later in life, resulting in much pain when witnessing the events of the Dreyfus Affair, or wrongful conviction of a powerful Jewish man in the French military. He criticized France's deplorable actions in his articles, awakening many to the overt anti-Semitism, and collaborated with many other powerful people who deemed a Jewish homeland necessary. Herzl used his power to not only criticize the wrongful actions by France, yet with the help of others, use the momentum to benefit Jews around the world to feel safe and at home in Israel, as it was established 40 years after his death. Mahatma, or Great Soul Gandhi, is an influential critic due to his sacrifices and unwavering values. Gandhi experienced frequent racism in South Africa, such as the time he was kicked off a first-class train despite him having a ticket, or when he was told to eat dinner in his hotel room as not to offend the other white residents. Gandhi would bring his wife, children, and other Indians to South Africa, where he was convicted of crimes of offending the white people by bringing many Indians to South Africa. He had stones and rocks thrown at him, inspiring him to make a change, and a change he made. When the First World War began, Gandhi and his fellow Indians tried to help the British back in India to help nullify racial inequality, yet that failed. Gandhi was eventually imprisoned for beginning a civil disobedience campaign when criticizing Britain for how they were separating the Indians by societal position, a complete opposition to Gandhi's beliefs and values. He would also starve himself famously as a protest, and finally, his protests began to work as he would continue to criticize the wrongful actions no matter the circumstances. Nelson Mandela's criticism of the apartheid laws exemplified his perseverance and determination when trying to achieve his goal of ending the apartheid. As a lawyer, he sacrificed money in order to defend Black people who were charged with breaking the apartheid laws, helping those much less fortunate than him. As the momentum was increasing and the protests were becoming more impactful, Nelson Mandela was arrested and sentenced to life in prison due to conspiracy to overthrow the government. Mandela's conviction made the Black people want to fight for equal rights more, demonstrating how criticism can have a lasting effect when its cause is so just and worth fighting for. He was eventually released in 1990, and 7 years later, he became the President of South Africa, illustrating the power of criticism, where all the power was placed in the hands of Mandela after years of it being taken away from him. In this day and age, we view critics as evil, pessimistic naysayers, but why? Is it because of people like Gordon Ramsay and critics on television, whose bursts of anger and outrage are highlighted? Is it because we feel it is too rude to criticize something, or to even offend someone anymore. We may never know. Criticism of injustice is innovation and should be celebrated as such. What I know is that we mustn't forget the great critics of the past who paved the way for safety and religious freedom like Herzl, peace and righteousness like Gandhi, and equality and the value of sacrifice like Mandela. Critics, I thank you, and I hope you now do too.
Thank you for an excellent speech.
Our next speaker will be from 9B, who will be speaking about having compassion for the homeless.
I see them staring. I feel their judgment. Look away, they whisper as they hold tightly onto their kids. Their eyes meet mine as I lower my gaze towards the ground. Powerless. My mouth is dry and my stomach churns, uncertain of my next meal. Traumatized by my past, uncertain of my future. These people don't know what I've been through. They don't know my story. The term homeless identity is constructed through various opinions and consists of a combination of stereotypes. One's homeless identity becomes the defining feature of one's character, overshadowing all other aspects of identity. Some critics believe that homelessness is an employment problem and that the homeless simply don't want to work. Some argue that all homeless people are mentally ill or addicts, suggesting that their begging for money is a scam to buy drugs. Some believe that material aid will make the homeless dependent on our society and not teach them to resolve their own problems. Many critics get angry when they hear that offers of temporary accommodation are declined by those sleeping on the streets. They criticize and label these people as ungrateful for the support being offered. My message to these critics is for them to understand that these offers of housing are temporary, forcing the homeless back onto the streets in a matter of days. Many homeless people refuse these temporary offers, as one's entry into a shelter bed will push someone else back onto the streets, resulting in them again facing the challenge and uncertainty of where they will sleep. In these cases, many would rather stay outside, as moving around so frequently becomes too difficult for those suffering serious mental health illnesses like post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and depression. As a society, we have the right to feel angry about homelessness, but we need to direct our energy towards the successive government policies which have created it and not towards those sleeping rough. The Victorian government has committed more than $600 million to social housing and homeless support, largely in response to the Royal Commission into Family Violence. But we are still awaiting the Victorian Affordable Housing Strategy. Our federal government is a long way from having a plan to tackle this problem. The increase of homeless people is driven by soaring housing costs, a drug crisis, and a need for mental health services. Many homeless shelters are prevalent in drug availability. So for those wanting to get clean, life in the shelters can be the provocation. When a place, like the shelters in this case, become barriers to detoxification, something is systematically wrong. Homelessness is a crisis we may not experience but live within. And with every crisis, there are critics. The critics on homelessness are those who make assumptions and create their own perceptions on issues which they have not experienced. Addressing these challenges will require a broader, community-wide response that engages every level of government to compassionately house and provide the necessary supports for our fellow citizens who call the streets their homes. We need to stop trying to come up with quick fixes, yet focus on a long-term solution to this worldwide crisis. In politics, there is a saying, Never let a good crisis go to waste, because in crisis, there is opportunity. So my message to the critics is, don't blame the crowded streets on those sleeping rough without understanding their stories, but direct that energy towards the successive government policies that have created it. Be an encourager. The world has plenty of critics already. Thank you.
Thank you for such a thought-provoking speech.
Next, we will hear from of 9C, who will be discussing romanticizing violent crime in film.
It was another typical weekend. I was flicking through the films on Netflix when I came across Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil and Vile, starring Zac Efron as Ted Bundy, the notorious serial killer who raped, killed, and decapitated more than 30 women and was executed for his horrific crimes. I wish I could say that this film was a one-off in this genre, but sadly, this film is not the only one of its kind. It is one of the big-budget Hollywood biopics about mass murderers such as Charles Manson and Jeffrey Dahmer. Critics need to understand that there's something immoral about romanticizing their warped and repulsive lives by relocating them from police mugshots to movie trailers. Watching Zac Efron, a previous Disney star, one could understand why some have claimed that humanizing such a monster with a likable actor is a complete insult to the families and victims of Ted Bundy. Young people who don't know the horrific crimes they committed, crushing over these mass killers is extremely concerning. In fact, Netflix requested that Twatchers quit tweeting about how appealing the infamous serial killer is. In a way, this high-rating film is exactly what Bundy would have wanted, especially if we recall his words to one of his biographers. "I don't care what you say, as long as it sells." The film constantly focuses in on the attractive Zac Efron, yet not on his real, heartless killings, nearly suggesting that it isn't too worried about demonstrating to the watcher exactly how extremely wicked Bundy truly was. Also, Disney star Ross Lynch portrayed a young Jeffrey Dahmer in the film My Friend Dahmer. By focusing on the killer's tortured past and anguished school life, the film not just humanizes Dahmer as a grim youngster wishing to simply fit in, but appears to offer an explanation for his acts and generate compassion towards him. Instead of focusing on those whose lives were cut short, which should be at the front of our thoughts, most attention is given to these evil humans. Without a doubt, one of the most harmful and hostile parts of these films is that the story of these killers overshadows the lives of their victims, and in a glamorized style, presents them as beguiling and complex. The over-the-top interest with serial killers reached its peak with a television show devoted to an intelligent, cultured, and almost moral character in the form of Dexter, who during 8 seasons won the hearts of many. Now you can add the highly acclaimed TV shows Hannibal, The Following, Bates Motel, and The Fall, all revolving around a brutal, sly serial killer. On the other hand, one could see that these films function as cautionary tales, teaching us that there are dark and manipulative people with hate in their hearts who are among us and who are not easily identifiable. In fact, the crucial message is that they do not fit into any stereotype. They can be anyone. To borrow from Bundy, murderers don't come crawling out of the dark. In short, these killers are treated as celebrity monsters and become household names due to their enormous exposure and the Hollywoodization of their life. How low have we sunk when cold-blooded murder is now considered a legitimate form of entertainment and enjoyment? So maybe next time, when you're contemplating pressing play on these kind of movies, spare thought for the victims, because we know Hollywood isn't.
Thank you. That was a very interesting perspective.
We will now listen to from 9C and her topic of judgment through social media.
Let me ask you all a question. Do you consider yourself a critic? Are you judgmental? We buy clothes worn by influencers and seek to mimic public images that they portray. We go on holidays to exotic locations that splash across our Instagram feeds. We buy food that is packaged in bold, stylish packaging. And we eat cafes whose food frequents our social media pages. We then take photos of our meals before we eat them as part of a viral social marketing phenomenon that now exists. Who would have ever thought that we need to photograph our food before we stuck our fork in and took a bite? Why exactly are we doing it, and who are we doing it all for? I speak of social media. It's fair to say that social media is reaching obsessive proportions. There are around 3.8 billion active social media users. Consider your own life. What's the first thing you do when you get up in the morning, and the last thing you do before going to sleep at night? For most, the answer is check your social media. Be it TikTok, Instagram, or Snapchat, the vast majority of time is to check what others are up to and comment about what others post. So for every 3.8 billion social media users, there are 3.8 billion critics just waiting to pass judgment. But when we catch on to these trending cafes, these looks, these clothes, we become part of the very same cycle. That is the social media phenomenon. We repost our own images, eating at those very same cafes, wearing those very same sunglasses in that very same outfit. In many cases, we build this image to total strangers who we have never met in person, and yet who hold a strong impression of us, our critics, based on our social media choices. How many times have you searched for a person on Instagram or Facebook just to get an idea of what they look like, who they're friends with, and what their interests are? Is this really how we want to get to know people? But more importantly, is this really how we want people getting to know us? Does a photo that may have taken 35 takes to achieve the perfect shot really tell our story? Are we so baseless and shallow as to think that the food we eat, the friends we keep, and the look we wear does justice to the person we really are? Gen Z, as we babies of the 2000s have been labelled, have been described as many things. Selfish, the now generation, technologically addicted, just to name a few. And I can't help but wonder, if we are spending so much time with our heads in our phones and laptops, are we missing life passing us by? Have we missed the chance to actually smell the roses because we are too busy taking photos of the roses? At some point, don't we need to question our real purpose in life, beyond getting as many likes on a photo as possible? Social media is an incredible marketing tool, but why are we trying to make our lives appear oh so perfect? Why are we trying so hard and judging others to be the same? Has social media put on us a pressure to be this way? Surely the cracks of failure that we all show at some point are normal, and yet we are trying so hard to keep those cracks hidden. It's time to give a loud and clear message to the critics, and let's be honest, that's all of us. Failure helps us succeed. J.K. Rowling made a speech addressing Harvard graduates. She spoke of the difference between what she wanted in life and what the world expected of her. In that speech, she admitted that what she feared most when she was a graduate was failure. She went on to say that the world is eager to give you a set of criteria by which to judge if you have succeeded or failed in life. We strive to succeed by pretending to ourselves we are something we are not. By allowing ourselves to fail, we get rid of the pressure to be perfect and start to live life with a greater sense of security. So if we are truly going to make our own small footprint on the world, we need to put the devices down and embrace all that life has to offer. And we need to be ready to accept that we won't always come flying over those challenges, and we won't always be earning the thumbs up or smiley face for what we do.
Thanks for a fantastic speech.
Now we will listen from 9D, whose topic is Is the win worth the impact?
We all love winners, but what does it take to be one? We sit down to watch elite athletes in the Olympics, listen to a talented musician give an epic performance, all the while oblivious to what went on behind the scenes. We celebrate people at the heights of their career, not acknowledging the impact on the individual. Many individuals have natural talent, but usually need external help to reach the pinnacle of their chosen fields. Some coaches believe that harsh methods and criticism are the most effective in achieving winning results. Some coaches' sole focus is achieving the win and will turn a blind eye to the mental and physical impact on their players. Take what happened to gymnast Nadia Comaneci. At the age of 14, Nadia Comaneci, who had grown up poor in a small town in Romania, wowed the world with her gymnastic performance in the 1976 Montreal Olympics. She obtained 7 perfect scores and 3 gold medals. It had never been done before. Nadia's 2 coaches discovered and trained her from the age of 6. They were known worldwide for their win-at-all-cost coaching mindset. After their victory with Nadia, they defected to the USA, where they utilised the same methods. Their students were virtually starved, constantly body shamed, and forced to train with broken bones or other injuries. At times, the girls were so hungry, they would sneak out of their bedrooms at night to eat toothpaste. The lack of calories and intense workouts resulted in malnourishment, and years later, some girls remained haunted by the abuse. As for Nadia, 1 year after her Olympic triumph, Nadia was hospitalized after attempting to kill herself by drinking bleach. The criticism had all been too much. However, criticism and abuse is not only found in the sporting arena. Criticism and abuse also made its way into the household of Amy Chua, who became known as the Tiger Mother. As a mother of 2 daughters, Chua was determined that her daughters excel at everything. She forced them to practice piano and violin for 2 to 3 hours per day. They practiced till their fingers bled and were forbidden to eat until they had completed their practice. They were denied school friendships as their entire focus was honed on their schoolwork and their music. Her daughters became music prodigies, with the older daughter playing at Carnegie Hall by age 14. But Chua's parenting backfired when her younger daughter cracked under her mother's non-stop criticism. She openly challenged her in public, screaming, "I hate the violin, I hate my life, and I hate this family." Chua's daughters became successful musicians. However, they live every day with a damaged mental health from their critical and abusive mother. Was it worth it? The accepted methodology in the USA gymnastics team was cruelty. If success is winning medals, Nadia's coaches proved that cruelty and harsh criticism was an effective means to their end. Chua's daughters became highly successful musicians, so arguably, the harsh parenting they endured achieved its objective. Those at the top of their fields discover all too quickly that a dream can end at any moment. But the notion that we are prepared to sacrifice the mental health of our youth on the route to success is confounding. The line between tough coaching or criticism and child abuse is blurred. All musicians spend years practicing. However, only a handful get the opportunity to perform on a main stage. In the Olympics, 3 get medals and only 1 gets gold. Almost everyone gets broken in the process. So parents and coaches, is the criticism worth it?
Thank you for that intriguing speech.
Our final speaker will be from 9D, who will be talking to us about her speech topic, Get Stuffed.
Get stuffed, said Victorian jockey Michelle Payne, after becoming the first woman ever to win the Melbourne Cup, challenging all those who had doubted her dream. Earlier in her career, Michelle was subjected to a major injury to her head and skull after falling at a race in Sandown Racecourse. Following this injury, Michelle was advised that she would not be able to continue her career as a jockey. In defiance of her critics, Michelle continued to train hard and ultimately dominated the Melbourne Cup in 2015, beating odds of 100 to 1. Michelle's story proves to us that we shouldn't let criticism get in the way of what we want to achieve. Critics have a tendency to discourage those who strive to excel and attempt to dampen their enthusiasm, which in many cases would stifle potential success. What's important is that we don't let these critics get in the way of our dreams. In 1919, Walt Disney, one of the 20th century's most creative visionaries and founder of what is now referred to as the happiest place on earth, was actually fired from the Kansas City Star, his local newspaper, for, and I quote, lacking creativity. The editor criticized his work and suggested that he wasn't fit for the role. Despite this setback, Disney went on to create his first successful cartoon character, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Disney's impeccable determination was further exhibited in the early 1950s when he first proposed the idea for Walt Disney World. His dream for an unprecedented wonderland was rejected over 300 times before he received funding for the theme park. In contrast to the criticism of his idea, Disneyland now makes over $50 billion a year and is the industry standard for theme parks around the world. It's important to understand that anyone who tries to do anything gets criticized. What we do get to choose is how we respond to that criticism. And lucky for us, some entrepreneurs have the courage to defy their critics and follow their passion. Thomas Edison, for example, one of the most famous inventors of all time, is credited with the invention of the incandescent light bulb. What lots of us don't know is that his invention of the light bulb actually failed over 1,000 times. When Edison was criticized for a lack of results, he commented that, "I have not failed. I've just found 1,000 ways that don't work." An attitude that paved the way for his wildly successful career. I've told you the stories today of 3 very successful individuals who have thrived against adversity and despite ongoing criticism have proved to us all that you shouldn't let other people's negative opinions get in the way of what you want to achieve. Our life as we know it would not be the same without the persistence of these icons. On Michelle Payne's journey towards becoming a jockey, she was told over and over again that she wasn't strong enough. And yet, she exceeded all expectations and ultimately held the cup up high. So to conclude, I'd like to emphasize the significance of Michelle Payne's famous quote addressed to her critics: "Get stuffed." Thank you.
Thank you for such an amazing speech.
Thank you all for joining us to listen to these great Baron Snider speeches. And thank you once again to Rabbi Kennard for adjudicating.
Well done to the finalists and all who participated. Hope everyone stays safe and healthy during these times.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to all the participants, and thank you to the whole year level and all to the parents who've joined us today. It was a wonderful demonstration again of the talent of our students, and I think we've heard a number of really excellent speeches, and we've seen some public speakers and we've heard from them, and I've no doubt they're going to go far in this field. It was particularly hard doing it on Zoom, there's no doubt about it. Keeping eye contact is a whole different matter when you're just staring at a camera. You don't have to look around the room but at the same time, it's much harder to read the room and sort of work with it in a way that a good public speaker can do, because you can't see the room. So well done to all of you for battling against the odds. So in a moment, I'm going to announce the winner, but I would like to say a word about what we have seen from each of the speakers. And I'm going to start at the beginning of a speech and talk about a good opening. And I thought you had an excellent opening. You really took me, and I'm sure many others, by some degree of shock when you started talking from the perspective of a homeless person. I thought that was a really powerful way to begin a speech. I like the way that you personalized the argument. You didn't just say that violence in films is bad. You said it hurts me and it's painful for us. And you said, how low have we sunk? And I thought that was a very good way of making an argument, not just sort of an abstract idea, but something that one really felt. Now, moving on, I'm always a big fan of structure in public speaking, and clear beginning, middle, and end, and helping the audience walk through the topic. And I thought did that very well. You had a very clear beginning where you stated the issue about the university courses. You had a very clear progression where you went through some of the counter arguments one by one, and you had a clear conclusion. So I really liked the structure there. Quite a few of you told stories about people, and you brought in examples. And I thought you brought in a good range of examples from Ruby Bridges and Greta Thunberg and old people in general. And speaking as one of those personally who in the far north had to trudge through snow to get to school, I like the reference to old people there. Moving on to storytellers also, I thought you did a very good job. You really brought to life the stories of Herzl and Gandhi and Mandela, and you explained what we were learning from each of them, which I thought was a very nice way of making your argument stand out and become more than just an argument, but become a story. No doubt your speech will have already been posted on social media and will be attracting lots and lots of likes. I liked the style, but I particularly liked your honesty. You said, this is what we do on social media. This is how we take lots of pictures of our food, and this is how we judge people, and we need to stop that. And I think that's absolutely right. And I think if you're talking about a problem like social media, you have to talk about Gen Z's part in it, and you did that very well.
Thank you.
Now, I said that it's very hard speaking on Zoom, and some of the techniques that we don't normally have to engage with our audience, sorry, that we do normally have, we don't transfer to the online medium. But I think you actually did that very well. I think you really engaged with your audience. You smiled, you leant forward occasionally to create that sense of connection. You looked dead at the camera the whole time. Your tone of voice changed as you went along, and you highlighted certain phrases like the word hate, like the word bled, and especially the word toothpaste. And I thought you really created an engagement actually because of the medium and not just despite of it. And finally, so there's only one left, so I'm going to talk about your ending, which I thought was very powerful. In fact, it was the same as your beginning. I think it takes a little bit of audacity to give the title of your speech, the opening words and the closing words all being get stuffed, but you actually pulled it off very well. And I think you in particular had a really good ending to all that. Now, I think I've gone through everyone. I hope I've gone through everyone. And I also want to thank our MCs, did a great job. And finally, the moment you've been waiting for, and you've been sitting very patiently while I went through all that other stuff, you want to know the winner. Well, it was hard. On my score sheet, I think there were 3 people who came very, very close to being the winner. But in the end, I had to pick one. And I think the one who really pulled off most different qualities in their speech was. So congratulations to, and well done to everyone. And thank you very much for this opportunity.